Visual Studio 2022 just released a new update to version 17.7. While there are the usual performance enhancements and bug fixes, I want to point out 4 of the new features that I really like in this new update. So let's dive right into Visual Studio. Now, I've already updated it. You don't want to see me walk through the update process, but once you get the version 17.7, you'll be able to have access to these updates. Now, I have here a suggestion app. If you're not familiar, I built an entire application on YouTube in partnership with MongoDB, and this is now actually in production. So if you wanted to leave me a suggestion, the place to go is suggestions.iamtimcorey.com. And this is the code that powers that suggestion app. And I have made a few tweaks since we released the videos, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is just to have some code to kind of show off the various bits of what this new 17.7 does. Now, I just want to point out, I'm just showing you 4. There are other things that this update does, but I'm just showing you the 4 that I really like the most. So the first one is one that's been a long time in coming and something that's really cool to have built into the product. It's a new thing that still needs work, but the compare files is now built into Visual Studio, which means that if you had 2 files, I'm going to pick 2 that have no relationship. But if I said suggestion detail and suggestions, I can right click. If I hold control, I can select 2 of those. I can right click and say compare selected. And this gives me a comparison of these 2 files and what's different. Now, obviously, these are 2 different files with 2 different reasons for existing, and they have no relationship to each other. So it's not a great comparison, but this is a way to compare this file against another file. Now, you might not want to compare 2 files side by side, or even in this project alone, you might want to go to a different project. Well, if you go to a file, maybe program.cs, maybe you say, what's different in this one compared to another copy I have on disk somewhere else? You can right click on it and say compare with, and that will open up a file dialog picker where you can pick a different project and look to see, okay, for the API probably has a program.cs. There we go. And I can do a comparison between these 2 and say, okay, what's the same, what's different? Now, again, I just chose 2 random projects, but that allows you to pick a different one on disk. So this is really helpful if you need that comparison tool built into Visual Studio. It's here instead of having to use Beyond Compare or something else. Now, I do want to point out one little snag that I believe they're working to fix is that if you have a file, let's say in a library, and then you select a file in a different project and right click, there's no comparison there. So I just want to point that out. That's not in the product yet to compare across projects. However, if you wanted to do that, you can still do it. Right click on global usings, say compare with, it opens up a library. You can come over to the UI and you come down to, I'm not sure what file it was, but suggestion app, global usings. There you go. There is the comparison for you. That's a better comparison. You can see what's different and what's the same about these 2 global usings from the 2 different projects. So you have to find it on disk instead of going through the Visual Studio UI. I'm sure that'll be updated at some point, but I just want to point out it's still possible. It's just, a new feature, and so not everything is necessarily implemented fully. Okay, so that's the first one, compare files. The next one, I love this thing. This is awesome. I have been waiting for this for so long. It makes me happy that it's finally here. Let's say you're in here and you say, oh, you know what? This code right here, I want to share that with somebody. And so you copy this and you open up Notepad or you open up your email server, whatever, and you paste it in, but it keeps all those tabs. Well, not anymore. Now let's turn off word wrap here. Now it indents so that the thing you copied, the outermost thing, that's where it starts the tab order from, not from the far left. So it's not going to copy this one tab, which means, and let's get rid of this, and let's come down here even further indent. I'm going to copy the whole thing just to be clear here. This for each is pretty far indented. right? So I copy this, I come over here and I paste, and it's still indented. Awesome. Okay, but let's go ahead and undo that for a minute. Let's Control Z, actually backspace, and come back over here and not highlight this part right here. Just start the for each. We'll copy this, and then we'll paste in, and there you go. So they're fully indented to the left. So you can have those indents if you really want them, if you copy that first line, but otherwise you can get rid of all that extra indenting. So the option here is this versus something like what we used to have, which is this, okay? And oftentimes in your email, whenever you're copying and pasting code to send to somebody, you don't want that extra just empty white space to the left. There's no reason for it. And so that's a really nice little feature that's been added just out of the box default. Okay, that's number 2, copy and trim. Number 3, if you've worked with continuous integration deployment, you've probably seen or used GitHub Actions. And GitHub Actions are really powerful, and yet they're written in YAML. That's a little frustrating, but there's tools now to help you. So most of my YAML files I have not handwritten. I have used a tool to write them, and then I just modify them if I need to. Well, in Visual Studio, you can now see GitHub Actions. And that's been there, I think, since 17.6. I'm not positive. It's been there for a little bit. But now, if you notice, so there's my YAML file for deployment. And if we look up and go edit mode, you can see the actual YAML. Cool. That's nice. And you can actually go to open the run GitHub. But a new feature is we can right-click on Actions and say New Workflow. And better yet, it doesn't give us just an empty YAML document. It walks us through creating a workflow. Now, you could create your own .yml file and just fill it in manually, but you can use this GUI tool to build out your YAML file in a way that's much easier to do, and then you can just modify any or tweak anything you need to after you build it. So that's a really nice feature to have built into Visual Studio. So that's 3, but we've got one more. And so the one that I also like is, if you're in, see how I have, let's just collapse down the app library. So now we're just in just my UI project. And if we expand this a little bit so you can see kind of more what's going on here, you'll see I've got lots of stuff open and even indented here and so on. And maybe I want to collapse all this down. I could just do the arrow key here and click on this, and it collapses, right? Well, not really. I mean, yes, it's collapsed, but when I click it again, all that stuff is open again. So now there is a new option. If you right-click on whatever level you want, you can say collapse all descendants. Also Control left arrow. So if you click on this or do Control plus left arrow, it collapses it and everything underneath it as well. So if you open this back up, notice these are all collapsed. And here, these are still all collapsed. So that just kind of cleans stuff up for you if you need to have it cleaned up. Just a nice little, time-saving thing. I'm not a huge fan of being in this right-click menu because this right-click menu now scrolls, at least with my font size. Not a huge fan of that. Everything is in this list. Of course, we also have the, even more stuff underneath more stuff. But I like the fact that Control left arrow is easy to remember. It's not one of those 3 key combos or dual, hit the Control arrow plus Control plus or, something weird where you have 2 actions. But it's a nice little shortcut. Remember that Control left arrow or whatever is on your device if you remapped them. But with that, you can just collapse down, and then when you open back up, you've got stuff that's collapsed down, and it's not reopened. Okay, so you come up here and Control arrow. Well, it's now collapsed. So that's another nice feature inside this new update. So that's the 4 features that I really like out of this update. You can go check out the release notes to see all of them, but I would encourage you to download and try the new 17.7. All right, thanks for watching. As always, I am Tim Corey.